I'm Tass Mellis of The Starters.
This is Ben Golliver with the Open Floor Podcast.
Hi, I'm Kristen Ludlow from NBA Inside Stuff.
I'm OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors.
Hey, I'm Elena Donon, and welcome to the Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, basketball fans of all ages, welcome to the Double Clutch WNBA podcast with me, Huw Hopkins, and featuring this week a hero of mine in the Minnesota Lynx head coach, Cheryl Reeve. As a four-time WNBA champion, Cheryl is arguably the most successful coach in league history, and I got to pick her brain on her journey to the top, which included stops with people like Bill Laimbeer, and she is now seeing her longtime point guard, Lindsay Whalen, retire and become a coach herself. Cheryl is really thoughtful and gives great insight into the upcoming collective bargaining agreement and a head coach's and general manager's role within the negotiations. And she also discusses rebuilding on the fly after losing two of her best players this season and using the highest draft pick they've had in years. And we touched on topics such as Maya Moore and her year off, and also Sylvia Fowles and what she's going to do this year to take the Minnesota Lynx to the next level. I really enjoyed this interview, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Hi Cheryl, how are you?
I'm good. Glad you caught me.
Oh yeah, well thank you for making the time. It's a real privilege to be speaking to you. Thanks for making the time with us today.
Absolutely.
I've got a bit of a confession to make. I actually feel it's a great honour because I'm a little bit of a coach myself, only local league, but actually
I love it.
I consider you one of my top two coaches. I think, if I'm honest, I think Greg Popovich slightly gets the nod over you simply because I'm a lifelong Spurs fan. But I think you're sitting number two on my list.
Certainly understandable. He's a much better coach, no doubt about it. He's got years of experience on me.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll take kindly to that.
Yeah, you got good taste.
Thank you very much. Well, yeah, like I said, thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I want to sort of touch on a couple of different topics with you, if that's all right. But I wanted to start off just by picking your brain a little bit because I spoke to James Wade a few weeks ago for the podcast.
Okay.
And he actually credited you as one of the main reasons that he is a head coach today, partly because of the way that you empowered him to lead different parts of practices and games and things like that. Yeah. I was going to ask, did you see something special in him to be able to say, okay, I need to empower you because you've got something going on, or is that something that you try to do with all your coaches?
Well, we certainly try to do it with all of our coaches. I obviously felt like James was ready and could be helpful. I like having different voices on our team, on our staff. I don't want to be a kind of a one voice show. I think it's important that there's confidence in all of our staff members. I'm somebody that likes to be, ready if somebody gets hit by a bus. If I get hit by a bus, I got to have somebody ready to do what we do. And I would tell James that, you got to be ready. You got to think about, on some days, you're an assistant coach, but on some days you got to go, okay, if I was a head coach today, what would I do? What would I be thinking about? What would I be talking about? What would be the messaging? What would I work on in practice? Those are things that I did as an assistant coach. And, I was given a lot of freedom as well. And I just saw the value in that, and I thought it was important. If somebody can't handle it, obviously, you start in a different place, but I thought James was ready for it.
So how much teaching do you do then? Or is it more of a, this person already has it? Or like you said, you've got those coaches who might not be ready to take on such things. So do you see that as your role to coach them as well as the players?
Yeah, for sure. That's a big responsibility, right? I have to, my mindset is to make sure that everyone is growing. I don't want anyone kind of left behind and not get the very best that I can give them in whatever role that they're in. I like for everyone to have a say. So when we have staff meetings, everyone is present, including our statistician. And no topics off the table, and nobody's expected to sit back and listen. If you have something to say, we all listen. And so I think just that's kind of where it starts. And then, certainly I have a way of doing things that I think, through all the years of my coaching that I feel pretty strongly about. I kind of call them non-negotiables. And, it's little things. It's doing things with a great deal of attention to detail. it's putting passion into what you're doing. If you have those two things, you're going to get pretty far. You have a chance to be successful. And then, we have a current coaching staff that has a different set of skills than my last staff. And so, whether it's a player or a coach, you want to put them in position to excel in whatever it is that they do. And whatever they bring to the table, I want them to feel great about. So, yes, there's teaching. This is how I want it done. But I also want them to do it in a way that suits them in terms of their personality, their delivery, and just the way that they present it. So, I think we work pretty closely together.
I noticed you spoke a lot about everybody having a voice, and does that extend to the players as well? Because I know you are James Wade, he described you as a no-nonsense type of coach, but I'm sure that's mainly when it comes to actually being on the floor. What sort of relationship do you have with the players themselves?
Well, and as kind of James indicated, they, when we're kind of between the lines and we're working, I expect a level of, again, attention to detail, passion for what we're doing, kind of all in, not doing little things well. That's the first thing that'll set me off, if you're not locked in on doing little things well, because that's how you win. And, I would say that for me, when you're not between the lines, it's probably the most valuable time is when you're sitting with players after practice, before practice. We have a players lounge where we eat. So sitting in there with them and, kind of being away from the pressure of the basketball piece, that's where you build your ability to, challenge a player when we are between the lines, that there's a trust there, that it's not personal, she's just trying to make me better, challenge me is what I want. And so I value the times away from the basketball so that they know how much I care about them, and whatever happens in practice, it's done and over with. We move on to the next thing. And, it's worked well. I just, it's about the players at all times. If I ever spend a day where it's not about them, I've made a big mistake, because it's all about them and how they feel about themselves. And, anything I can do to support that is what we need to be doing.
So how does that compare to some of your earlier seasons then as an assistant? Because, I mean, generally the whole WNBA landscape has changed. I mean, it is really popular these days, and I think it's more obvious that it's popular because of things like social media. But what that does lead to is it sometimes leads to sort of negative conversations, especially around like the CBA coming up and women not getting paid enough. And then on the other side, you have these trolls and misogynists who sort of try to bring the league down. But from your time with teams like earlier in your career as an assistant with Charlotte and Cleveland, how far has the league come? And I sort of mean that in quite a general aspect, like obviously just as structurally as the league and the popularity of the league, but also the I guess maturity of teams and franchises and also coaching staffs and players, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and like you said, I've been doing this is 19 years for me, and so I've seen it since 2001. And, my time here in Minnesota, this is my 10th season. And so I had 3 teams essentially, and, with different leadership styles. And I think, Bill Lambier, is somebody that, was a great mentor to me, that kind of showed me more professional as opposed to college mindsets. And I never wanted him, to be right on this aspect. He told me that women coaches have never coached professionally, and they need to learn, and they needed to work for NBA guys who did it, right? So there's some inherent problems with the statement, of course, right? And so then I would get my back up, and I wanted to prove him wrong. And then, a couple years into it, working for him, I thought, you know what? He's right. I can't get this experience unless I'm doing it, right? So I'm doing it as an assistant coach, but I also am sitting there being passed over for head jobs in favor of NBA, former NBA players who would come in and not be very successful at it. So there was, and not be very qualified to do so. But I'd say that I think where the league is now, we have a number of female coaches that have professional experience, have kind of come up through the ranks. And so I think the league is more mature in that way, that kind of the depth of coaching now, more than 20 years of having the WNBA, those experiences are now, gained by women. And to Bill's point, now we can successfully coach professional basketball because it is a different mindset. It's an easier mindset, to be very frank. And like I said, it is all about the players. And I think that our league, kind of across the league, that's kind of known. And if you're a franchise that it's not about the players, it's talked about, amongst the players, and you just don't want to be, known for that. So I would say that there's a great deal of maturity. The coaching is as good as it's ever been, 1 through 12. And you know that if you don't bring it as a coach, you're not going to be successful. Your team's not going to be prepared. So I like that. I like the challenge of every night, trying to, outwork your opponent, which is not easy to do.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of great talent in the coaching ranks these days. I was, like I said, I spoke to James Wade, but we've also had a few others on recently, including Sandy Brondello, and
yep.
It's we touched on Bill there. But what's it like going up against him as a head coach? Because he's still one of the great coaches, I think, himself, and
sure.
I think he's got a very scary team over in Las Vegas this year. So what's it like going up against coaches that you coached for as an assistant?
Yeah, I think when it first happened, like your first time, there's a little more to it. Of course you want to beat your mentor. And I don't know why that is, but that's the sentiment. And then obviously, if you're the mentor, you don't want your mentee to be successful. So there's that kind of, and so much about each other. That's the cool thing is, you know what the other one is thinking, and you're trying to pump fake where you need to pump fake. And I would say with Bill though, it's been so many games against each other that's worn off.
Yeah.
And it's now just about two people. That are just highly competitive. Like we just had a preseason game in Las Vegas, and people that were there and kind of close to the teams said, "Oh my gosh, that felt like Game 5." That did not feel like a preseason game because both of us prepare in that way. Both of us want to win. We don't care that it's a preseason game. And,
yeah.
So I say we bring that out of each other. And I think Bill mentioned, back in 2006 when he hired me, after working together for a couple of years, is what he said. We're competitive. That's why I like Cheryl. She has a competitive bone, and at the same time, there's the Bill Cheryl kind of entertainment I think that goes with the two of us playing against each other. We actually like each other. You may not know it during the game. I always said Bill brings out the worst in you as a competitor.
Yeah.
And he likes that. He likes to do that. But I'd say the preseason game for us, it was, we wanted to find out our identity, and he wanted to win. And so for us to be able to, kind of be successful in Vegas, even though it didn't count, it counted. It counted to us.
Yeah. Preseason has been very interesting for both of your teams, really, because obviously he's got big pieces that he's trying to fold into that offense that he's been building over the past few years, but so have you. I mean, the Lynx have come quite far in this off-season, and even some Minnesota fans might think that you've gone so far as fraternizing with the enemy, bringing in former rivals and like Odyssey Sims and things like that. But what's it been like for you this year? Because Minnesota, I think I was checking earlier, I don't think they had a pick above 10, above the 10th pick since like 2012, and even then it was traded with Washington, I believe. So you must have been going into this off season with a slightly different mindset.
Yeah, it was a lot of work, and we look at where we started. We had information, about who was returning, who was not, who was a question mark. And as we sifted through all that and the off season started, and you get to January and you move in free agency, the amount of work that was necessary to put this team together, and a little bit lucky, and so we had a lot of information throughout the off season of who might be available, outside of free agency, what was going to be going on, who was available for trade. Certainly the Cam Beige situation, we all knew about. We all knew, who the players were, meaning which teams, or not, were going to be possibilities. And then also what was the fallout, from any situation, including the Cam Beige, and, which players, might be affected by these things. And so whether it was in Connecticut, for, Cheney, or whether it was, capitalizing on, maybe, in Lexi Brown's case, a player that, wanted out and they obliged. So just, we kind of got lucky in a couple of situations, And, the Odyssey Sims thing came about probably because of Liz Cambage, that they were trying to position themselves from a financial standpoint to be able to, to fit everything they wanted to fit on their roster. And that came about very late. So, we did okay in free agency. We were able to steal Damiris Dantas away from Atlanta. We were able to sign Karima Christmas. That we thought those were very, very important parts. And then we were going into the draft with 5 draft picks. And we were very, very hopeful that we'd be able to move at least one of them for a non-rookie. And, we were able to get Lexi Brown with the 18th pick. And then obviously Nafisa Collier and Jess Shepard, were 2 players that, we really felt strongly about their fit with us. And then a couple of days later, Odyssey Sim transaction happened. So it was a whirlwind, and it was a lot of work, a lot of preparation. And, we were thrilled with, again, where we started and where we ended up. But now it's time, obviously, to take all those names and stuff that we did in the off season and actually put it to work and see if it can be a good basketball team.
Yeah. I think it's been very clear that you've not approached this off season with a sort of woe is me type attitude, which I think, you may have had every right to. Last year, you knew from sort of halfway through the season, or maybe earlier in the season, that Lindsay Whalen wasn't coming back, but it must have still been scary coming into training camp and pre-season without her. That's been the first time in quite some time, and she's been your coach on the court for all that time. What was it like knowing that you were entering a season without her?
There was the last season, the 2018 season, which was Lindsay's last. We had Danielle Robinson on the roster, so the process began a while ago, but it was not 100% fully Danielle's team. It was trying to figure out what she was about and what we had as we move forward. I will say that what Lindsay Whalen brought to the table in the way of intangibles, nobody has. And that's why she was one of the elite point guards to ever play. And so we kind of had this knowledge. Again, you also know where your players are in terms of age and abilities. And so we knew we were in for change. And so it feels like we've been in for change for a while. We've been kind of moving on, so it doesn't feel so new right now. Even though I know we haven't played a regular season game yet, I feel like, the mindset has shifted, fully. This is not, where we still have, 1 foot in the bucket over there. We've got 2 feet in, and we've been doing this for a while. We work so much with Danielle Robinson in the off season. So it doesn't feel like it's new. I already know what the differences are. And so you focus on what you have and what their strengths are, and you move on from maybe things the way that you used to do them, maybe there are certain plays that Lindsay ran so well that maybe not be our strength anymore, but our strength is something different. And so identifying those things and just, again, fully immersing yourself into that. There's a lot of conversation. I will say that we have to answer a lot of questions about who's not here and how do we move on. But it feels like we've been doing it for so long, and we'll find out. We have to adjust, and like I said, maybe play calls that have been comfortable for 8 years all of a sudden may not be, and that's okay. It just looks different. We still want to be successful.
Yeah. You were a 4-time champion coach. You've still got champions on the roster there. I can't imagine anyone's going to be letting up. I think I saw one of the team's social media posts, and it said, different faces, same culture. And right. I thought if there's any teams that is going to be able to pull that off, it's probably going to be Minnesota. Partly down to your leadership, but also because of players like Sylvia Fowles and a couple of the other veterans that you do still have, even if they are taking smaller roles this coming season. Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Sylvia Fowles is, she's just a couple years left in her career. So, she wants these to be quality years. She doesn't want to have a fall off. And so she's hungry. She's eager, I think, to prove, some of the folks that are predicting, orders of finishes, et cetera. I think she's got a little bit of a chip on her shoulder about it. She was not on the all defensive team either first or second team last year, which is just simply absurd.
Yeah.
It's flawed. It's flawed. It's not necessarily the voters' fault. I think there's the positional aspect of it that but even then, there's no better post defender than Sylvia Fowles. There's just simply not. She's so hard to play against. But I would say overall, Huw, that teams are not feeling sorry for us as they've seen. Some of the changes. They're all rooting for the demise of the Minnesota Lynx. And we're here to disappoint them. That's going to be our mission.
Very good, very good. So we're going to take a quick break here from my chat with Cheryl Reeve to talk about our friends at nbastore.eu. If you are like me and you always want to be wearing at least one piece of basketball-related clothing, then nbastore.eu is a place for you. They've got socks, sweatbands, shorts, t-shirts, hoodies, and, of course, jerseys of your favourite team or player. But the coolest thing about it is that Double Clutch has teamed up with nbastore.eu to bring you a 15% discount off all orders. If you add the code DCPOD15, that's DCPOD15, at the checkout of your order, then the discount will be taken off then and there. So what are you waiting for? Get the best gear now with a 15% discount by using the code DCPOD15 today. You have, of course, sort of had one of your highest draft picks in many years now, and you've selected Napheesa Collier was your first round pick from UConn. Well, what did you see in her?
Well, I had some experience with Napheesa in my USA basketball time, where she was a part of the pool and made the World Cup team. What we like about Fee, I think, Gino talks about this, that there's not many that play harder than Fee. She's constantly in a possession, moving and cutting, and if it's on defense, she's in right places, she's helping, she's rebounding, and so I like her ability to the intangible, the effort standpoint. From a skill standpoint, this is a big challenge for her because she's really been a post player for most of her career, and we're asking her to be a small forward.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's difficult. Not everybody's able to make that transition. I gained some confidence in seeing her do it for USAB because we were so, thin at the guard spot that we needed some people to, kind of change position. But she is only 6'1", and, is as big as my small forwards. I mean, Stephanie Talbot is 6'2", and Simone is 6'1", so she knows she's a perimeter player. But it's a big time difference in terms of, what you have to do and the people that you have to chase around off of screens, and but she's handling it all well. She's had some good days, and then she has other days where they don't go as well, but she always comes back exactly the same way, ready to work, and just confident.
And who do you see picking up the main offensive load? Because obviously we spoke about Sil earlier, who has been an MVP because of her production on the offensive end, on the defensive end. Like you said, she's entering the tail end of her career. She may not be the offensive force that she once was, but maybe you've seen differently in training camp.
Yeah, no, Sil's always going to be able to do, she's one of those that athletically is superior. I don't think that father time is going to affect her the same way that you see, maybe with some guard play, where, the guards coming in the league right now are so athletic, and some of the older players, have some challenges with that. Whereas I think Sylvia Fowles continues to remain elite athletically. And it's just, to me, a question of whether she wants to be banged on, how often, whether she's up for that, each night. But I would say that she's always going to be able to do what she does. And defensively, her efforts, when she's locked into what the schemes are and when she's available and help side defense, she's just really, really good. You can't make an entry pass on her.
Yeah.
She just is so committed to, the way that she defends her players. So I think that she'll be able to continue to provide serious offense for us. I think we're going to be able to help her if I can get, other players to kind of share the load. I don't want it to be a case where I only have Sylvia Fowles and she gets 20 plus a game, but we can't win. So we need Sylvia Fowles to be Sil, but then I also need someone like an Odyssey Sims to really take the load. And she's been really good for us. I think she's averaged 20 in the couple games that we've played. Danielle Robinson has to get to double figures. Damiris Dantas, my 4 spot. I need 8 to 10 from her. So we're trying to, produce a balanced attack. It just can't be Sil because in this league, the league is too good. You only have one good player, you're not going to win very many games. And so we want to try to create a, more of a balanced attack.
Yeah, I think we've seen that even in recent years. Like over in New York last year, they only really had Tina, who was creating great offensive opportunities, and the other players, obviously, not to knock them, but they're more solid role players rather than great offensive scorers. You're right in saying that you do need that one who's maybe scoring nearly 20, and then maybe 2 or 3 who are scoring in the 15 range to really put together a well-rounded offense. I did have a question about one player I thought could be of use. Now, Temi Fagbenle is a sort of late suspended list addition. I was wondering what you thought her role was going to be in the future, because I know she's going to be joining the British team in the Eurobasket, and obviously we're very, very keen on her over in the UK here. We're very proud of her, and we featured her last year on Double Clutch website and did an interview with her. What's your plans with Temi if she's going to be in the team at all this year?
Yeah, we're really excited for Temi. It's obviously difficult for our team, but it's just the way that professional women's basketball is, unfortunately, that, we're kind of sharing time in different places, and this is really important to Temi to have gotten Great Britain to this point and now have a chance to try to qualify for Olympics. I think that's a really exciting time for her, and I just said that to her recently, that I know how excited she is, to get over there and get to work and try to complete a really big goal for her country. So we're excited for that. Obviously, it does affect our team in 2019, and I thought she had such momentum coming out of the 2018 season. I was hopeful, that we could be able to, insert her right in. I had a starting job open. It just didn't work that way, unfortunately. And so now what we're going to do, Temi was kind enough to be with us for a couple weeks. Since we were so new and so many new faces, we thought it was important, that she at least see what we're about, so that when she comes over after Eurobasket, that, it's not brand new for her. We're not starting from zero. Now, she may not remember everything, and that's okay, but she'll at least, it won't take as long for her to get up to speed. It's one of those things that, we'll see where she's at in July, and, we have to waive people, to make room. It's not a salary situation. It's more of a roster spot, because we're going to open the season with 12.
Yeah.
So then when she comes, then somebody has to go, and, I'm not, we have no idea what's going to happen in July and, how we're going to work it. But yeah, we're excited about Temi. I think she's somebody that, can be very helpful to our team. She's maturing, and, she's so coachable. Anything you tell her, she does. And so she's got some serious upside. This is a player that was a third-round pick for us, that has worked out, to be, pretty darn valuable, given the fact that she was a third round, because not many third rounders have a place in this league. Yeah. And, she's one that I think has been a pretty good story for us.
You've also got players who are first and second rounders who struggle to make a team in this league. I think Megan Gustafsson is a perfect example of that this year. But it seems like there's one or two players like that every year who it's becoming more and more difficult to make these rosters. And you touched on it earlier, that the women's basketball, the way the competitions are set up, it doesn't really help. Certainly it doesn't help the WNBA, because the league seems to be having to shift its start dates and end dates for various competitions every year. We do have the CBA negotiations coming up. I'm not expecting to see any outright changes that are going to change the way the league is structured at this stage. But what would you like to see? How would you like to see the league restructured? If you had a magic wand and could change everything, how would you want it to be run?
Well, of course, as an American, I would like to see that the WNBA is the league that becomes the priority for any player, whether it's players that or natural-born citizens of the U.S. or we have Australians in the league, whatever nationality. The WNBA, just like the NBA, would like it for it to be the destination. It be the highest, place, the dream. Certainly other leagues in the world are obviously really good leagues, but we have to flip it on its head. We cannot be the lowest paid league of all the leagues. It just can't happen. And, so that would be the biggest thing, but that's not, that wand, that has to be more to it. There's got to be some magic dust in that wand, right? Like we got to be able to, we need some revenue. It's a different business model than what we see in Europe and other countries. There's club teams, like a Fenerbahce that, it's soccer, it's basketball, men's, and it's more of like a shared resources. It's not necessarily being generated by, people signing up to sponsor women's basketball. They're a beneficiary of, some shared resources. We do have a little bit of that in the WNBA with shared resources with the NBA, but it does not as it pertains to salaries. And so we need a big jump in this country with continuing to be leaders on how we treat women in business, women in sports, women in politics. We're always treated as less than, and just to be paid equal. We're not there yet. And I don't expect equality in pay as it pertains to the NBA. We have a long way to go with that, but just simple things like the NBA leveraging their relationships as they do, but to demand more. For example, ESPN's partnership. That is a source of revenue for every successful league, a significant source of revenue. And when ESPN signed on in 2014, it was significant. But then we find out the MLS is making 3 times what the WNBA is making. We signed up for $25 million. They signed up for $75 million, despite the ratings being the same. So there's more of a leap of faith taken with men's sports that just does not exist for women's sports. A very simple thing that our leader on the NBA side, Adam Silver, can do is to stop the messaging around disparaging the WNBA, and at every chance they get, they say it loses money. Well, if your own people are saying that, that's the picture you're painting for the external, for the, you mentioned the trolls and the misogynists. That's all they need, is that fuel. So there's lots that can be done. I do think that Adam Silver wants us to be successful, but I don't think he quite understands how much of a role that he has to play in that in order for it to get where I think it can go.
But you've also just seen the announcement of a new WNBA commissioner, which is a different title. What have you heard? I mean, you're obviously a head coach in the league. You've got front office responsibilities. What has been communicated to you in terms of what powers the new commissioner will have in comparison to what it was previously dubbed as the president, I believe?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't know the inner workings of, who past presidents like Elisa Borders, who they reported to. I know there's some serious challenges for that position as president. What in the past, I don't know that the support of the league office is what we think it needs to be. So I'm really hopeful that in naming Cathy Engelbert as a commissioner, that does she have a little more autonomy? But autonomy isn't necessarily where we just want to be a separate entity. I think that's important that we're not. I want to move closer to the NBA, and I want Adam Silver and Mark Tatum to be working hand in hand. I want Cathy Engelbert to have the ear of Adam Silver to say, hey, we need this, we need more. I'm hopeful that's what she has. I'm hopeful that she has a closer relationship to the NBA to be able to get some of the things done. She's a big-time CEO of a big-time firm in Deloitte. And the amount of, the increase in revenue of her leadership. So she has some real business knowledge. I will say the WNBA is unique, and, you'll see, but this has been her career. She's in a male-dominated profession. Like, there's not too many professions that are not male-dominated. Yeah. But this particular profession is extremely male-dominated. And she's been able to, rise to the ranks of CEO of Deloitte, which, major coup, in my opinion, that Adam and Mark were able to attract someone of her caliber. But they need to empower her. She's got to be able to get in the room and make real moves with being able to get sponsorship dollars into this league. I mean, we need meaningful revenue coming in. The season ticket base is really important, but not as important as sponsorship dollars, TV dollars, and supporting and really moving the needle from a revenue standpoint so that we can pay these players more and we can become the premier league in the entire world.
It must be difficult for someone in your position because, of course, the CBA largely pertains to the players themselves. How do you have the role that you do as a leader on a team in a front office situation, but also, you want the best for these women. You obviously have spoken candidly in the past and just now about how important it is that they get the right pay, but what voice do you think you can have in that process, if any, or what role do you think you have in supporting the players versus owners, for example?
Yeah, and I think this is a kind of, interesting dynamic in that this is not a case of, perhaps on the NBA side when there's millions, billions of dollars being talked about, and how much of the revenue they want to share. That's a different fight than what these players are going through. These are women. These are female athletes that are not promoted in the same way. They're not provided with the same resources. And so this is a little more about equality in that way as opposed to actual pay. It's about, investing in women. And so I think that, whether it's Kathy Engelbert or whether it was Lisa Borders, anyone that's the head of this league wants to see it grow. So that we're all after the same thing. So it's an interesting, being on sides of this. We're actually all on the same side in that way, that we want and we must be different. We're 20 years in. It has to change. And so I think we all know that. I think where there's a line in the sand is a little bit more is how. How do you get there? And so, for me, I'm all about empowering women. I just can't engage in conversations with our players in details of the CBA. From that standpoint, the conversations are about what elements, do ownership and teams want as a part of the CBA versus the players. And we just don't engage in those conversations. But every day of my life, I want them to feel empowered, to speak out and use their voices. I think that's my job as their coach and as a leader. But then I do have to put my franchise hat on in terms of some of the things that might be being discussed in negotiations. But we really do all want the same thing. Yeah,
that's a very, very important viewpoint. I've sort of been looking at this CBA and worrying a little bit that it might overshadow the league this year, or it could be an elephant in the room, or sort of an undercurrent to what the league is going through. And if there's a player injury, the thing that might lead the headlines is not, this player has gone down. Isn't that a sad situation for the player and the team? It's going to be, what about the CBA? How can this be used to sort of as negotiation leverage or something? So it's interesting that you say that actually is, it is both sides that want the best. It shouldn't be an us versus them situation.
But it always comes down to that. I think it's unavoidable that there will be, conversation around it, as they should be. But I know that both sides are, they're in deep discussions, and, like I said, both sides, want resolution. And I don't know the details at this point, but we won't be able to escape the fact that there is some light being shown on that conversation.
Yeah. Just a few more things before I let you go. I know we spoke a little earlier about, you've received a lot of questions about who isn't on the roster versus who is on the roster this year. But I would sort of be remiss if, for fans in the UK, if they didn't hear a bit of a viewpoint from yourself about Maya Moore. And I just sort of wanted to see, how is she? Have you spoken to her? In
this day and age, we don't, the younger generation, we don't actually talk, we message.
Yeah.
So that's when we say talk, that's actually what we talked over message. Maya's been really good, about reaching out to some of her teammates that are still here. Certainly she and I have been in touch. I like to know, what she's up to, and she has some goals this off season, and so I like to check in and see how she's doing. And she does the same thing. After the draft, she reached out to us, and of course as we get underway with the team, she's curious about who's doing what, and followed preseason games. So yeah, we're this is what it's beyond basketball, right? So we're going to be in each other's lives, regardless, and so there's that kind of relationship. And I do know that Maya, wants to lay low and wants the privacy, and But I know that people want to know that she's going to be back, and that narrative is going to be ongoing, and we're just going to take it a little bit at a time, and just support Maya in any way that we can.
Cool. Well, I've done my duty. I won't ask anymore. But back to basketball. What are you hoping for? Where do you reckon the Lynx are going to be finishing up this season?
Well, I never know the answer to that. From 2010 all the way through this particular upcoming season, I never have a prediction on wins or losses. And matter of fact, that's the kind of the messaging to the team that we talked a lot about today. And we do this periodically. It's really important that we understand what we're trying to do, how teams are successful. We talk a lot about that. We drill down. And that our focus is not, looking up and looking out and thinking about wins and, that sort of thing. That's not how you win. The method to winning is locking in on the moment and doing little things in a possession to help you win a possession. If you win enough possessions, you can win a game. And so everything else takes care of itself when you're locked in on doing your job, doing it well, the way we treat each other, through good times and mostly in bad. That's what I want to know, who we are when it doesn't go our way. What happens to us, because the best of teams are able to, get through the difficult times in a game or even in a season. And obviously that's yet to be known with this particular team. But those are things that we talk about and coach every day. It's not just the X's and O's. There's so much more to it, as you know, having been a coach. So I have no predictions for you. I want to win the first 5 minutes tomorrow and go from there.
Fair enough. Well, that's quite the ambition. I think you're probably gonna, like you said earlier, I think you're gonna surprise quite a few people who may have been writing off the Lynx for this season, but you won't catch me being one of those people. I really appreciate your time, Cheryl. It's truly been a blessing for me to talk to you today, and I hope we can do it later in the season. Maybe we can check up with you halfway through the year or something.
That sounds great. Really appreciate what you're doing and obviously supporting the league, and we'll try to take care of Temmie for you.
That's all for this week, folks. I hope you enjoyed that chat with Cheryl as much as I did. If you like what you heard, then please share the podcast on the social media accounts that you're on. You can find us. We're on Twitter and on Instagram at Double Clutch UK. We're also on Facebook, and you can find all of our work around the NBA Finals and the WNBA season that's now up and running. You can find all of those across all the different social media platforms. Also, if you can give us a bit of a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Android, Google Play, whatever, that'd be great, guys. And remember, if you're buying any new merchandise, then please make sure you use the DCPOD15, DCPOD15, the discount code at nbastore.eu to get money off your next order. But for now, peace.